She shed her battle armor before the human stranger. "Don't shy away. Help me bathe these wounds." The sun had barely started its slow descent when the human stepped onto the edge of the alien colony. Broken metal structures and scorched ground stretched out as far as the eye could see. Smoke drifted lazily from distant fires, remnants of a battle fought hours or maybe days ago. Time was hard to keep track of in the war-torn wilderness. The air smelled of burning fuel and ozone, and the ground beneath his boots rattled slightly with the distant echoes of collapsing buildings. He adjusted the straps of his pack and slowed his pace. He had seen signs of life, a shadow moving near the wreckage, but nothing prepared him for what he would find. In the middle of a shattered plaza, a figure lay half-hidden behind a crumbling wall. At first glance, the armor caught his attention. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, dark, angular, almost organic in shape, with glowing symbols etched into its surface. He froze for a moment. Armor like that usually meant danger. It marked someone trained for killing, someone not to be approached lightly. But then he noticed the slight movement beneath the metal plates. A hand twitched, and then a muffled groan escaped through a small crack in the helmet. The human's instincts screamed caution, but something inside him, a mixture of curiosity and empathy, pushed him forward. He stepped carefully over debris, making his way closer to the armored figure. As he drew near, the figure's helmet shifted slightly. The voice that came out was weak but clear, almost human in its desperation. "Don't leave me here." The words made him pause. Her voice wasn't harsh or threatening. It was soft, vulnerable, and strangely compelling. The human kneeled a few feet away, letting her see he meant no harm. "I won't leave," he said. "I'll help you." There was a long pause, then a metallic clink as part of the armor shifted. He watched wide-eyed as the alien warrior slowly removed a gauntlet, revealing a forearm covered in burns and deep cuts. Pain etched across her features, but it wasn't anger or fear that filled her eyes. It was relief, faint but unmistakable. "You have courage," she said, her voice trembling. "Most would not come close." He shook his head. "I'm not most. I help those who need it." The warrior gave a faint, almost imperceptible nod. She struggled to sit up, and the human quickly moved closer to steady her. She was taller than he had expected, lean and powerful even in her wounded state. Her armor, while menacing, now seemed heavy, cumbersome, and almost fragile. He noticed the cracks and scorched marks along the plating, signs of close calls and brutal fights. "Help me bathe these wounds," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't shy away." It was a strange request, almost intimate in its tone, yet he felt no hesitation. Humanity had always been about connection in times of adversity, about helping those in need, even when danger lurked. He nodded and began carefully inspecting the injuries. Burns and gashes ran along her arms and shoulders. He could see how much pain she was in, yet she tried to sit upright as if defiance could make the injuries less severe. "You've been through a lot," he said gently. "I can't fix it all, but I can help you start healing." She exhaled, a sound that seemed both relieved and tired. "I am not used to this," she admitted. "Most expect me to fight, to kill, not to trust." Humans had a unique way of noticing things others overlooked. He watched her carefully as he worked, observing the tension in her muscles, the way her jaw tightened when a touch caused pain, the subtle flicker of trust in her eyes. Humanity was built on observation, adaptation, and compassion, qualities that had allowed him to survive in harsh conditions before. Now, those same qualities allowed him to bridge the gap between species, to offer help without fear. He cleaned her wounds carefully, using water he had filtered from a nearby stream. The warrior flinched at first, then slowly allowed herself to relax under his hands. Her armor lay half-dismantled around her, exposing skin that was alien in hue and texture, yet undeniably alive, fragile, and in need of care. "You are strange," she murmured with a hint of awe. "Most would not touch me like this." He shrugged. "I see a life in pain." "That's all. Life matters." For the first time, she allowed a faint smile to touch her lips, despite the pain. There was something in humanity she had not anticipated. Strength not in weapons, not in armor, but in kindness and intellect. Perhaps this was why humans had survived so many conflicts and crossed so many stars. They were underestimated. They adapted. They thought in ways others did not expect. Minutes passed. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the plaza. Birds, strange and multicolored, took flight from nearby trees, startled by the distant rumble of collapsing structures. The human worked in silence, careful not to cause more pain than necessary. He noted the strange symbols etched into her armor, wondering what stories they held, what history they spoke of. Each mark, each scratch, each burn was a testament to battles fought, enemies faced, and victories won. "I am called Lyra," the warrior said softly. "And you?" "Call me Alex," the human replied. "You don't have to hide from me." Lyra paused, then took a shaky breath. "I am not used to people who help without wanting something in return." Alex gave a small, honest smile. "Humans sometimes do things because it is right, not because of reward." There was a strange silence after that, filled only by the distant groans of damaged metal and faint whispers of wind through the ruined city. The human's hands continued their careful work, bandaging burns and wrapping cuts. Lyra's breathing steadied, though every movement still caused a sharp flare of pain. Yet she allowed herself to lean slightly closer, a small gesture of trust. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally. "Because I can," he said simply. "Because someone needs it, because I know one day someone would do the same for me." Her eyes, sharp and calculating before, softened for a moment. She studied him, noting his quiet determination, the calm in his movements, the way he did not flinch at the sight of her injuries. Perhaps for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel safe, not fully but enough to rest. As night began to fall, Alex built a small fire to ward off predators and the creeping chill. The warmth was comforting, and Lyra accepted it silently, her armor resting in pieces around her like a discarded shell. Even in her vulnerability, she exuded a quiet power, a reminder of her survival, her discipline, and the countless battles that had brought her here. "You humans are not what I expected," she admitted. "And you aliens are not all enemies," Alex replied. "Some of you just need a little help." Lyra allowed herself a faint chuckle, though it was tinged with pain. She looked up at him, studying the human who had come into her world without fear, without judgment, without expectation. He had done something remarkable, something that few in her universe could understand. He had seen her as a life, not a weapon, not a threat. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she felt a flicker of hope. She did not know what the future held, or whether she could survive the night, or what dangers lurked beyond the ruined walls. But for now, she trusted him. And in a galaxy that had underestimated humanity countless times, that trust would prove to be a powerful seed, one that might change everything. The night deepened, and the stars above shone cold and distant. Yet in the small clearing, near the fire, an alien warrior and a human sat in quiet companionship. The air was tense with past battles and lingering threats, yet there was a fragile peace. Words had been shared, wounds had been tended, and an unspoken bond had begun to form. A bond that neither fully understood yet both recognized. Tomorrow the world might demand battle, cunning, and survival once more. But tonight, humanity had reached across the stars and touched something beyond fear and suspicion. And in the silent understanding between them, something unbreakable had begun. Morning came slowly over the ruined colony. Pale light filtered through the jagged remains of buildings, casting long, trembling shadows across the scorched ground. The air smelled faintly of ash, mixed with the sharp tang of burned metal. Alex stirred first, his senses alert even in the fragile quiet. He scanned the horizon, noting the twisted debris, the remnants of fires, and the eerie silence. Somewhere nearby, distant birds, or creatures that looked like birds, moved in the wreckage, calling softly to one another. Lyra had slept for most of the night, her breathing deep but uneven. Her injuries were still fresh, but she had allowed herself a rare reprieve. Now, sitting on a chunk of broken concrete, she slowly flexed her fingers, wincing at the soreness in her arms. The bandages Alex had applied were careful and neat, but she knew they would only protect her for a short while. The fight she had barely survived still lingered in every ache, every twitch of a muscle, every sharp flare when she moved. "You're awake," she said quietly, her voice still rough but firmer than it had been yesterday. "I've been up for a while," Alex replied, glancing at her without judgment. "I wanted to make sure no predators came close during the night." Lyra's eyes flickered over him, and for the first time she truly studied the human sitting across from her. There was no armor, no weapon, just a human with simple clothing and careful movements. He looked fragile in the wrong circumstances, yet something in his calm demeanor suggested a different kind of strength. Not brute strength like soldiers or warriors wielded, but a steady, quiet force that could survive in ways that brute force could not. You humans, she began, then paused, searching for words. You think differently. Alex tilted his head. We have to, he said simply. We survive by noticing things others miss, by finding solutions instead of just fighting. Lyra nodded slowly. There was a strange admiration in her gaze, though she quickly masked it. Your ways are strange, yet useful. Perhaps even powerful. She flinched slightly, adjusting her arm. I should have learned this long ago. My people, my commanders, they only care about strength, not strategy, not patience, not subtlety. Alex gave a small smile. Strength is not just in muscles or weapons. Sometimes it's in thinking, waiting, understanding the situation before acting. For a moment, Lyra looked away, watching the ruined skyline. The conversation made her uncomfortable. She had lived her life in constant motion, fighting, surviving, earning scars like badges of honor. She had not expected a human to teach her patience, or to make her feel small in a way that was not physical but mental. Tell me about your people, Alex said, sitting a little closer. I need to understand what I'm helping. Lyra hesitated, her eyes narrowed, a flicker of caution returning. Not everyone can hear these things. If my people knew I spoke to you, if the Empire found out, it would mean death for me. You can trust me, Alex said firmly. I won't betray you, I only want to help. Another pause. She studied him, searching his face for deceit or weakness. Finding none, she exhaled and began slowly, almost reluctantly, recounting the battles, the strategies, and the losses. She spoke of the empire that had consumed her home planet, of allies lost and enemies gained. She explained the harsh hierarchy of her people, the ruthless lessons she had learned since childhood, and the long path that had turned her into the warrior she was. Alex listened, nodding occasionally. He did not interrupt, did not judge. He simply absorbed every detail, filing it away to help her to understand, to survive together. Humanity's greatest skill, he thought, was the ability to adapt to information and to act intelligently on it. Already he was planning how to navigate the territory, how to avoid patrols, and how to get Lyra somewhere safe while keeping them both alive. When she finished, there was a silence that stretched long and heavy. Lyra finally looked at him and said, You humans, you survive where others would fail. I did not expect this from you. I thought you weak, fragile, expendable. Alex shrugged. Appearances can be deceiving, and we learn from everything we see, everything we touch. That's how we survive. Her gaze lingered on him. Slowly, she allowed herself to believe that he might be right. Perhaps humans were more than she had ever expected, clever, brave, and capable of surprising feats. She had fought many battles, and yet she had never faced a creature like him. One who could survive without weapons, who could heal without magic, who could think faster than most warriors she had encountered. The quiet was broken by a distant noise, metal scraping against metal, the faint hum of engines. Both of them froze. Lyra's eyes darted toward the source. Empire patrols, she whispered, her voice tight with tension. They search this area. They will find us if we stay. Alex stood slowly, scanning the horizon. We need to move, he said. I know a place not far from here, a safe spot, hidden from sight and with water and shelter. Lyra winced as she tried to rise. Her wounds protested, but she forced herself up, leaning heavily on Alex's shoulder. Every movement sent shocks of pain through her body, yet she did not complain. Pain, she had learned, was temporary. Survival, clever action, and strategy were eternal. As they moved through the ruins, Alex guided her carefully, pointing out hidden patches of debris that could hide their movements from above. He showed her ways to use the environment as a shield, ways to listen for the faintest warning sounds, ways to anticipate danger. Lyra followed, impressed despite herself. His knowledge was instinctive, almost instinctual, but refined with experience and thought. Hours passed as they navigated through narrow streets, fallen towers, and shattered courtyards. Occasionally, Lyra would stumble, and Alex would catch her, steadying her against the wall. Each time, she felt a mixture of gratitude and something strange she could not name, a sense of trust, of reliance on another being that she had never allowed herself before. Finally, they reached the hidden shelter Alex had promised. It was a small cave, partially concealed by a fallen tower and overgrown vines. The entrance was tight enough that only someone careful could squeeze through, and inside the air was cool, clean, and untouched by the recent destruction outside. Lyra lowered herself to the ground, breathing heavily. You humans really do think ahead, she said, her voice laced with fatigue and surprise. Alex smiled faintly. Survival is about preparation, about noticing things others overlook. Inside the cave, he set up a small fire and rummaged through his pack. He pulled out dried rations and water, offering them to Lyra. She hesitated, then accepted. Hunger gnawed at her despite the pain, and she ate slowly, savoring the nourishment. "You think differently," she said again between bites. "You see patterns, you see opportunity, you are patient. Most would have rushed, died, or been destroyed by now." "And most underestimate humans," Alex replied, eyes steady. "They see strength as weapons, power as fear. But sometimes intelligence, adaptability, and trust are stronger than any blade." Lyra's expression softened, a faint respect in her gaze. She had faced countless enemies, and yet the human beside her had survived where many stronger, more dangerous creatures would have failed. Something about him made her feel as if humanity, as a whole, had been underestimated for far too long. As night began to settle outside, the firelight flickered across Lyra's features. Her armor rested in pieces beside her, scars visible in the glow. She watched Alex carefully, noting the quiet confidence in his movements, the steady rhythm of his actions, the way he seemed to anticipate danger before it arrived. Perhaps for the first time, she considered that humans might be more than allies. They might be a force the galaxy had not yet fully reckoned with. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we need to move further. The Empire will not stop searching. They will find us if we linger too long." Alex nodded. "I know, and I have a plan. We can stay ahead of them, use the terrain, and find allies. We are not defenseless." Lyra studied him for a long moment. She did not fully trust easily. But something in him, the way he thought, the way he acted, the way he attended to her wounds without hesitation, made her feel she could rely on him. Perhaps she had no choice but to, but for the first time she wanted to. The cave was quiet except for the faint crackle of fire. The distant ruins seemed like a world away, a battlefield that had not yet fully claimed them. But in this small, hidden place, the human and the alien warrior sat side by side, their differences set aside, a fragile partnership forming. One was wounded but strong, the other calm and clever. Together, they were beginning something that neither fully understood yet both recognized: a shared purpose, a shared survival, and perhaps something greater than either had imagined. Lyra finally allowed herself to close her eyes for a brief rest. She did not trust easily, but she could trust him enough to survive the night. And in a galaxy filled with doubt, fear, and underestimated humans, that trust was already proving powerful. Alex watched her sleep for a moment, his mind planning the next steps. Survival was never easy, but humanity had a way of turning the impossible into possible. And right now, in the quiet of the hidden cave with a warrior at his side, he felt a flicker of hope, not just for himself, but for the human spirit, the part of his species that refused to bow, refused to falter, and refused to be ignored. Dawn arrived slowly, painting the horizon with soft streaks of orange and pink. The ruins of the colony looked less threatening in the morning light, but danger was never far away. Alex had already been awake for some time, carefully examining the paths around the hidden cave. His sharp eyes noted broken walls, shallow craters, and scattered debris, all potential hiding places for both predators and Empire patrols. Every detail mattered. Survival depended on noticing what others overlooked. Lyra was slower to wake. Her body ached with the lingering pain of yesterday's injuries, but she rose with determination. She adjusted the bandages Alex had applied, testing her mobility. Each movement sent sharp reminders of the fight she had barely survived. "I cannot move fast yet," she admitted, her voice quiet but steady. "But I will manage," Alex nodded. "We'll go carefully, no rushing, every step must be measured." She studied him, noticing the calm in his voice, the precision in his movements. Humans were strange creatures. They were physically weaker than most warriors she had encountered, yet they survived and thrived in ways that defied logic. Strength was obvious, but intelligence, strategy, and awareness were invisible weapons, ones humans wielded naturally. The pair set out carefully, moving through the broken streets of the colony. Alex led, pointing out safe patches and warning of loose rubble. Lyra followed closely, leaning lightly on him when the terrain forced her to. Despite her injuries, there was a sharpness in her movements, a grace that reminded Alex of her years of combat experience. Hours passed as they navigated toward the edge of the colony. The sounds of distant engines grew louder. Empire patrols were already scouring the area, likely tracking signs of movement. Alex signaled for silence. They crouched behind a fallen tower, observing a small squad of armored soldiers moving methodically through the ruins. Their weapons glinted in the sunlight, and their steps were precise and mechanical. "They will find us if we continue on the open streets," Alex whispered. "We need to use the tunnels beneath the colony. I saw an entrance near the northern wall." Lyra studied the patrols and nodded. "Lead the way. I trust your judgment." Trust was not given lightly. For centuries, her people had relied only on strength and experience. Yet here she was, following a human through unfamiliar territory, relying on his instincts. It was unsettling, but she recognized its necessity. They reached the tunnel entrance, partially concealed by rubble and twisted metal. The darkness inside smelled of damp stone and dust, but it offered protection. Alex moved first, holding a small torch to illuminate the path. Lyra followed, her keen eyes adjusting quickly to the dim light. Every step echoed softly, a constant reminder that silence was as important as strength. The tunnel twisted and turned, occasionally splitting into side passages. Alex guided them carefully, marking their path with small scratches on the walls so they could find their way back if needed. The patrols above passed without noticing them, moving past the entrance as if the tunnel did not exist. "This way," Alex whispered after a short while. "We can climb to the surface further ahead, beyond their patrol zones." Lyra nodded, impressed. The human's ability to read the terrain and anticipate enemy movements was remarkable. Most warriors relied on speed, weapons, and brute force. Alex relied on observation, patience, and understanding. She had underestimated him before, but now she began to see a different kind of strength, one that could outmatch her in ways she had never expected. As they climbed out of the tunnel, they found themselves at the edge of a forest, thick with alien trees and undergrowth. The canopy above blocked most of the sunlight, casting the forest floor in shadow. Here, they could move unseen, at least for a while. Alex led them deeper into the forest, carefully selecting paths that would offer both cover and a clear view of approaching threats. Lyra kept close, listening to the subtle sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of alien creatures, and the occasional snap of a branch. Her senses, honed through years of combat, complemented Alex's observation skills perfectly. Together, they moved like a single unit, alert and silent. Suddenly, the quiet was broken by a low growl. Lyra froze, eyes narrowing. From the shadows, a creature emerged. It was large, with jagged claws and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. It was clearly a predator, one that had survived in this war-torn world for years. Lyra instinctively moved in front of Alex, preparing to fight despite her injuries. "Wait," Alex whispered, holding up a hand. He crouched slightly, observing the creature. "It's cautious, it's not attacking. Give me a moment." Lyra watched, tense but silent. Alex slowly reached into his pack and pulled out a small device, pressing a button that emitted a soft, low-frequency hum. The creature paused, tilting its head as if confused by the sound. Alex continued moving slowly, guiding the predator away from their path without harming it. After tense moments, the creature retreated, disappearing into the undergrowth. Lyra exhaled, impressed. You didn't fight it?" Alex shook his head. "Sometimes fighting isn't the answer. Observation, patience, and understanding, these can be stronger than weapons." She studied him, a faint smile appearing despite her exhaustion. Humans were indeed strange. They survived not through raw strength, but through intelligence and careful action. Perhaps this was why they had endured so long in a galaxy filled with far stronger species. The forest opened up into a small clearing. Alex led them to a natural spring, hidden from view by overhanging vines. He motioned for Lyra to rest and drink. The water was cool and clear, rejuvenating their tired bodies. Lyra dipped her hands into the spring, washing dirt and grime from her arms. She glanced at Alex, noting the steady calm in his demeanor. "You humans are different from anyone I have known," she said softly. "And you aliens are not all enemies," Alex replied, smiling faintly. "Some of you just need the right help to survive." Lyra chuckled, a sound rare for her. "Perhaps you are right. I never thought I would find someone like you in a place like this." They rested briefly, knowing the Empire would not cease its search. The forest offered temporary safety, but it could not protect them forever. Alex studied the map he had sketched in his mind, planning their next moves. The key was to reach a rebel outpost, a hidden location where they could rest, resupply, and strategize. The journey would be dangerous, but together they had a chance. Hours passed as they moved cautiously through the forest. Occasionally, they encountered small patrols, but Alex's observation and quick thinking kept them hidden. Lyra marveled at his ability to anticipate danger, to use terrain to their advantage, and to remain calm under pressure. She realized that strength was not always measured in physical power. Intelligence, patience, and strategy could turn the tide of battle just as effectively. As night fell, they found a concealed cave on the edge of the forest. Alex built a small fire and prepared a simple meal. Lyra sat nearby, tending to her wounds once more. The quiet companionship between them grew stronger. Trust was no longer a question, it had begun to take root. "You humans," Lyra said after a long silence, "you survive where others fail, you adapt, you think, you endure. I had underestimated you." Alex looked at her, a faint smile on his face. "Underestimation is dangerous," he said, "but it can also be useful. It keeps enemies off balance, and it reminds us to keep improving." Lyra studied him, feeling a mixture of respect and something deeper, something she could not yet name. The human beside her had proven himself in ways she had not anticipated. He was clever, patient, and fearless in ways that went beyond mere physical strength. Perhaps this was why humans had survived so long in a galaxy that sought to dominate them. The night deepened and the fire crackled softly. The distant sounds of the Empire were faint but ever present. Alex kept watch while Lyra rested, his mind planning the next steps. Survival depended on strategy, on intelligence, and on the ability to adapt to circumstances. Humanity had mastered all three. Lyra's eyes closed briefly, exhaustion overtaking her. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she felt a fragile sense of safety. She trusted Alex, not just as a companion, but as someone who could guide them through the dangers ahead. The Empire would not stop searching. Threats would continue to emerge. But for now, they had survived another day, together. In the quiet of the hidden cave, a human and an alien warrior sat side by side, their differences set aside. One was wounded but experienced, the other clever, patient, and strategic. Together, they had begun to forge a partnership, one that neither fully understood yet both recognized. The stars above shone cold and distant, but in the warmth of the fire and the quiet of the forest, hope flickered. Humanity had once again proven that intelligence, patience, and courage could overcome raw strength. And Lyra, the warrior who had survived countless battles, had begun to see that survival was not just about fighting. It was about understanding, trusting, and working together. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new challenges, and new tests of their abilities. But Alex and Lyra were ready. Together, they would face whatever came next, and humanity's ingenuity would continue to shine in ways the galaxy had not yet fully realized. The forest had grown darker by the time Alex and Lyra reached the edge of a rocky plateau. The sun had set completely, leaving the landscape bathed in silver moonlight. Shadows stretched across the jagged terrain, and the wind whispered through the cracks in the rocks. Every step forward was careful, deliberate. They could not afford mistakes. The Empire's patrols were relentless, and they were closing in faster than either of them had anticipated. Alex scanned the horizon with his sharp eyes. From this height, he could see the faint glimmers of patrol lights moving across the forest below. The Empire's forces were organized, methodical, and determined, but they moved like predictable machines, and Alex knew humans were not predictable. That unpredictability could be their advantage. Lyra moved beside him cautiously, her body still stiff from previous wounds. She had grown stronger, but every movement reminded her of the pain she had endured. She had never relied on another being to survive, and yet here she was, following a human who had proven himself capable in ways she had never imagined. She could see in him a mind that planned, analyzed, and calculated, and it both unsettled and fascinated her. "Listen," Alex said softly, crouching behind a jagged rock. "They are moving faster than usual. Something has changed. Maybe they suspect someone survived the last engagement." Lyra nodded, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her short blade. "They will find us if we do not act carefully, but the humans, you think in ways that surprise me. Perhaps together we can turn this situation to our advantage." Alex gave her a faint smile. "That's the plan. We survive by thinking ahead, using what they do not expect." Strength is not always enough. The two of them descended carefully toward a narrow ravine that Alex had spotted from above. The rocky walls provided cover, and the dense underbrush would hide their movements. Every step was measured. Alex led, pointing out weak spots in the rocks that could collapse or areas where a misstep could expose them to enemy sight. Lyra followed, her own senses alert, every muscle tensed for sudden action. They reached the bottom of the ravine, where a small stream cut through the rocks. The sound of flowing water was a relief, masking any movement they made. Alex motioned for Lyra to kneel while he examined the path ahead. From his vantage point, he noted that the patrols above were spreading out, searching methodically. They were thorough but slow, and Alex knew that the humans' advantage lay in speed, observation, and clever tactics. "This is where we can strike," he whispered. "We need to create a distraction, draw them away, and then move toward the rebel outpost. We have one chance to do this right." Lyra studied him carefully. She had fought countless battles, yet the way he planned, the way he observed, was unlike anything she had seen. Humans were clever in ways the Empire did not understand. They did not rely on raw strength alone. They adapted, improvised, and survived, and right now that adaptability was their greatest weapon. Alex began preparing a small trap. Using loose rocks, branches, and vines, he created a device that could trigger a minor landslide if the patrols moved too close. It was simple but effective, designed to scare and delay, not to kill. Lyra watched, impressed by the careful thought behind each action. She had been trained to fight, to kill, and to survive, but she had never considered strategy in such subtle, intelligent ways. "Your methods are strange," she admitted quietly, "but effective, very effective." Alex nodded, his focus never wavering. "We cannot fight them head-on, not yet. We use what we know, what they do not expect. That is how humans survive. That is how we turn the tide." Hours passed as they prepared their position. The moon rose higher, casting cold light across the rocky terrain. The patrols below were growing closer, their voices faint but audible. Alex signaled to Lyra to remain silent and to observe. Then the moment arrived. A squad of soldiers moved directly beneath their position. Alex triggered the trap. Rocks and branches tumbled down the slope, creating a controlled landslide. The patrol shouted in surprise, scattering in different directions, trying to regain control. The noise echoed through the ravine, masking Alex and Lyra's movements. They moved quickly and quietly, slipping past the distracted soldiers and deeper into the forest. Lyra followed closely, her respect for the human beside her growing. He was not the strongest or the fastest, but he was clever, precise, and calm under pressure. He turned the dangers around them into opportunities, demonstrating the kind of intelligence that made humans unpredictable and formidable. Eventually, they reached a hidden entrance to the rebel outpost Alex had mentioned. Concealed by dense foliage and partially camouflaged rocks, it was a perfect hideout. They slipped inside, greeted by wary rebels who had been expecting reinforcements. The outpost was small but functional, with supplies, basic medical equipment, and maps of the surrounding territories. Lyra lowered herself onto a bench, letting exhaustion wash over her. She studied Alex, noting how he immediately began assessing the area, checking security, and ensuring their position was safe. His mind worked quickly, efficiently, and without hesitation. "You humans think differently," she said softly. "You survive not just with strength, but with intelligence, with patience, with planning. I underestimated you." Alex shook his head. "Underestimation can be dangerous, but it also reminds us to keep observing, learning, and improving." Lyra watched him quietly, realizing that survival was not just about fighting or enduring pain. It was about understanding the situation, adapting, and using every advantage available. Humans had mastered this art in ways she had never imagined. As the night deepened, Alex and Lyra discussed their next moves. The Empire would not stop searching, and their journey was far from over. But with careful planning, observation, and the unexpected ingenuity of humanity, they had a chance. Together, they could survive, even thrive, where others might fail. In the quiet of the rebel outpost, surrounded by allies who relied on stealth and intelligence rather than brute force alone, Lyra felt a growing sense of hope. The human beside her had proven himself capable in ways that challenged everything she had known about survival, strength, and strategy. Tomorrow, they would need to move again, to confront dangers that were greater than what they had faced so far. But for now, they had survived another night. And in the process, Lyra had begun to see that humanity was not just resilient. They were clever, adaptable, and unpredictable in ways that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. She looked at Alex and realized that her trust in him had deepened. It was no longer just about survival. It was about partnership, strategy, and a recognition that strength came in many forms. The Empire had underestimated them both, and that mistake would cost it dearly. The stars shone cold and distant above the outpost, but inside, the warmth of strategy, trust, and clever planning created a different kind of light. Lyra knew that together they could face whatever came next, and that humanity's ingenuity would continue to shine, guiding them through challenges that no warrior, no matter how skilled, could face alone. The night passed with careful watch, both of them alert yet learning from one another. Lyra shared knowledge of alien combat tactics, while Alex explained human strategies for stealth, observation, and improvisation. Each lesson built on the last, creating a foundation of trust and mutual respect. By the time the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, they were ready. The Empire was still out there, relentless and unyielding, but Alex and Lyra were prepared. They had survived ambushes, predators, and exhaustion. They had proven that intelligence, planning, and adaptability could outmatch brute force, and they were stronger together than either could be alone. With a final check of their gear and supplies, Alex led Lyra toward the edge of the outpost, eyes scanning the horizon for signs of movement. The forest beyond awaited, filled with both danger and opportunity. Every step would require caution, every choice precision. But they were ready. Together, human and alien, they would face the Empire, challenge the odds, and turn survival into victory. Lyra glanced at Alex, a faint smile touching her lips despite the lingering pain. "Perhaps I misjudged your kind," she said softly. Alex smiled back. "Perhaps, but misjudgment can be corrected with the right actions." The sun rose fully, casting long shadows across the rebel outpost. In its light, humanity's ingenuity and courage shone brightly. The Empire would not see them coming, and when the time came, they would realize that humans were a force to be reckoned with, not through raw power alone, but through cleverness, strategy, and unwavering determination. And for Lyra, the warrior who had survived countless battles, the realization was clear. Humans could fight in ways the galaxy had never anticipated, and with them as allies, she had a chance not just to survive, but to win. The journey ahead would be dangerous, filled with battles, strategies, and challenges that tested every skill they possessed. But Alex and Lyra were ready. Together, they had turned survival into a plan, a partnership, and a force that could not be ignored. The forest was alive with tension as Alex and Lyra prepared to leave the rebel outpost. The Empire's patrols had increased, and their scouts had reported signs of a large force moving in their direction. Every rustle of leaves, every distant echo, and every shadow carried the potential for danger. Yet Alex moved with calm confidence, his mind calculating every possibility, every route, every trap. Humanity had survived countless challenges through ingenuity, observation, and clever action, and now that survival instinct was at its peak. Lyra adjusted her armor, lighter now after days of careful repair, and tested her wounds. They had healed enough to allow her mobility, though pain still lingered. She glanced at Alex, noting how focused he remained, scanning the terrain, predicting what lay ahead. He was unlike any ally she had ever had. Humans were fragile in appearance, yet their intelligence and courage made them formidable. She had underestimated them before, but she would not make that mistake again. "Are you ready?" Alex asked quietly, checking the maps he had memorized. Lyra nodded. "I am ready." "Let them come. I have fought far worse, and with you we have a chance to turn the tide." They moved carefully through the dense forest, following a hidden path that Alex had marked in his mind. The Empire's forces were close now, their presence growing stronger, almost palpable. Lyra's senses, sharpened by years of combat, detected faint signs of movement, footprints, broken branches, subtle sounds that betrayed the enemy's approach. She whispered warnings, and Alex adjusted their course accordingly, using every advantage the terrain provided. Hours passed as they maneuvered toward the strategic ridge that overlooked the Empire's advance. From this vantage point, they could see the soldiers moving in formation below, their armor reflecting faint moonlight, their weapons ready. The numbers were overwhelming, yet Alex and Lyra were calm. They did not need to fight blindly. Their strength lay in observation, in strategy, and in the unexpected. Alex crouched behind a large boulder, motioning for Lyra to do the same. We can't take them head-on. But we can use the terrain, set traps, and force them into mistakes. They are powerful, yes, but predictable if we understand them. Lyra studied the enemy below, her eyes narrowing. She could see the precision in their movement, the confidence in their formation, and yet, as Alex had said, predictability in their steps. Humans had learned to survive against stronger foes, not by matching them in power, but by thinking differently, by using intelligence as their weapon. And now, that human was beside her, planning every move. They spent hours preparing. Alex used fallen logs, vines, and rocks to create traps and obstacles, positioning them so the Empire's soldiers would stumble into them naturally. Lyra assisted, using her combat knowledge to strengthen weak points and plan ambush spots. The combination of human strategy and alien warrior experience created a defense that was far more effective than either could have achieved alone. When the first patrol stepped into the traps, chaos erupted. Rocks tumbled, branches snapped, and soldiers stumbled, disoriented by the sudden and unexpected hazards. Alex and Lyra moved with precision, striking where necessary, guiding the enemy into the traps they had prepared. Every move was calculated, every action deliberate. The Empire's soldiers tried to regroup, but Alex had anticipated their strategy. Using signals, hand movements, and quiet whispers, he directed Lyra to move swiftly, striking at key positions. The humans' intelligence and adaptability allowed them to control the flow of battle, turning a small, hidden force into a dominant presence. Lyra's combat skills complemented his plan perfectly. Where strategy was needed, Alex provided direction. Where strength was required, Lyra delivered swift, precise strikes. Hours passed in a blur of motion, strategy, and survival. The Empire's soldiers, though superior in number and technology, found themselves outmaneuvered, forced into positions they had not expected. Each trap, each calculated strike, each clever diversion weakened their advantage. Lyra watched in awe as Alex's mind worked in real time, adapting to every change, predicting every move, and staying several steps ahead. By the time the sun began to rise, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson, the Empire's forces were in retreat. The combined force of human intelligence and alien warrior skill had turned the tide. The soldiers fled, leaving behind equipment, supplies, and pride. They had underestimated humans once again and paid the price. Lyra lowered her blade, breathing heavily. Her body ached, but exhilaration replaced exhaustion. "You humans, I did not understand your power before," she admitted. "Not your physical strength, but your mind. Your adaptability, your strategy, it is remarkable." Alex smiled faintly. "Brains can be as strong as any weapon. We survive because we think, we plan, we adapt, and we never underestimate what we are capable of." The two stood on the ridge, watching the retreating Empire forces. The sun rose fully, casting long shadows across the battlefield. In that light, the scars of combat were visible, but so was triumph. Humanity had survived again, not through brute force, but through intellect, clever planning, and the courage to act where others hesitated. Lyra studied him, feeling a mix of respect, admiration, and something she had not expected: trust. She had relied on herself for centuries, yet here she was, standing beside a human who had proven his worth in ways far beyond physical strength. Together they had achieved what seemed impossible. The rebel outpost welcomed them back with cautious celebration. Supplies were replenished, injuries treated, and plans made for future defense. Lyra moved among the rebels, sharing her knowledge and learning from them. Alex, always observant, continued to analyze the situation, identifying potential threats and opportunities. Night fell again, but the sense of victory lingered. Alex and Lyra sat together, reviewing the day's events. They did not speak of fear or doubt, only of strategy and survival. The Empire had underestimated them, and that mistake would shape the future. Humans, Lyra realized, were more than resilient. They were clever, adaptable, and unpredictable in ways that could change the balance of power across the galaxy. "I never thought humans could do this," Lyra admitted softly. "Not against a force like the Empire." "Yet here we are, survivors, victorious," Alex nodded. "We adapt, we survive, and sometimes we turn impossible situations into victories. That is what makes humanity strong." She studied him, noting the calm determination in his eyes, the steady confidence in his movements, and the quiet intelligence in his planning. She had fought countless battles, but none like this. Not with a human beside her, guiding, planning, and anticipating every threat. She realized that humans had a strength far greater than most understood, the ability to think, to adapt, and to survive against impossible odds. Days passed as they regrouped with the rebels, fortifying positions, treating wounds, and preparing for the inevitable return of the Empire. Alex's strategies became lessons for the rebels, teaching them how to use terrain, observation, and careful planning to survive. Lyra contributed with her combat knowledge, showing how skill and strength could complement strategy. The combination was powerful, creating a force that was ready for whatever came next. Finally, the Empire returned, determined and relentless, but Alex and Lyra were prepared. Using every lesson learned, every trap set, and every plan devised, they faced the enemy not with fear, but with intelligence and confidence. The battle was fierce, but this time the Empire underestimated humans, and that was their undoing. Every move Alex anticipated, every strike Lyra executed, turned the tide further. Soldiers fell into carefully prepared traps, ambushes disoriented them, and the rebels' newfound confidence created chaos in the ranks. The Empire's forces were superior in numbers, but they could not predict the combination of human intelligence and alien warrior skill. Hours of relentless action passed. The Empire's forces faltered, retreating under the pressure of strategies they could not counter. By midday, the battlefield was quiet, except for the sounds of the surviving soldiers fleeing, leaving behind weapons, armor, and pride. Lyra lowered her blade, breathing heavily but triumphant. She turned to Alex, her eyes reflecting both respect and amazement. "You humans, your mind is stronger than any weapon. I understand now. We underestimated you, and the galaxy will learn the same lesson." Alex nodded, his expression calm but satisfied. "We survive because we think, adapt, and never give up. That is humanity's power." Together they stood on the battlefield, watching the remnants of the Empire retreat. The sun shone brightly, revealing the scars of combat but also the signs of victory. Humanity had proven itself once more, not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, strategy, and courage. Lyra finally allowed herself a smile. She had trusted a human, relied on him, and together they had changed the outcome of a conflict that seemed impossible to overcome. She realized that humans were more than resilient. They were clever, adaptable, and capable of turning the tide when hope seemed lost. The rebel outpost welcomed them back with celebration. Supplies were restored, wounds treated, and the survivors shared stories of the victory. Alex and Lyra stood side by side, not as teacher and student or warrior and companion, but as equals, partners in survival and strategy. The Empire had underestimated humanity, and that mistake would echo across the galaxy. For Lyra, the warrior who had survived countless battles, the realization was clear. Humans could think, adapt, and survive in ways that no one expected. With a human like Alex by her side, she had hope, strength, and the certainty that the future could be shaped, even in a galaxy filled with danger. The stars above shone brightly that night, distant yet unwavering. In their light, a human and an alien warrior stood together, victorious, their partnership a symbol of intelligence, courage, and survival. The Empire had underestimated them, but the galaxy would never forget. Humanity had proven itself, not just through strength, but through the power of thought, strategy, and unwavering determination. And as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Alex and Lyra looked ahead, ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy would throw at them next, together, clever and unyielding.